Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today, bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is Dave Quadrelli, as known on Caps Twitter, and Harman Dial joins me. Harman Dial of The Athletic, my regular co-host of this show. Let's start with it right away. We have to talk about this game. Jeff Paterson's going to join us. Family Feud later in the show. It's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a really fun show. But let's just get it out of the way off the top, because this was I think when the Canucks lose or when they win, usually like us talking about the game is pretty minimal. Like I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about it. I don't think that's the case today, Harm. I think there's a lot to take away from this game, and I think there's a lot of things to get to. So before we do that, I'll get to it. For those that haven't seen it, and I'm sure you have, more views on that than the post I made of me proposing to my fiance. More views on that tweet than there is on that post of the engagement. But for those that didn't see it, Pierre-Luc Dubois at the start of the game, as you know by now, took a lazy hooking penalty. Then he takes a couple swings at Quinn Hughes. Then he's clearly targeting the Canucks captain. Kiefer Sherwood goes after him. Chaos ensues just 5 minutes into the game. You know that part of the story. What you might not know is the tweet that I sent out afterwards, where I said I see Pierre-Luc Dubois hasn't changed much, lazy penalty, then a couple dumb stick swings because he's frustrated at himself, and then I said it's a good thing Washington's doing well right now, because you know the second that they aren't, or that he's not, that he's going to quit on his teammates yet again. Listeners of this show know I don't like Pierre-Luc Dubois. Caps Twitter found that out last night. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, of course, goes on to score not only the first goal of the game, but the second and ultimately game-winning goal in overtime of the game. So you can imagine what my mentions were like last night. As we see the overtime goal, too. And we're going to break the whole game down, so I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. But yes, 2-goal performance for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And the thing I will say off the top, he had just 5 goals going into last night. He's got 7 now. But anyways, I do know that Pierre-Luc Dubois is having a great season, and the point of the tweet wasn't to say like, oh, this player sucks. It was, the point is, yeah, I'm glad he's doing well right now. I don't like him. I don't like his history, and I think as soon as things go south for either him or the team, at some point, I don't know when, he's just going to quit on his teammates like he always does, and that's what I was trying to convey. Obviously, that falls on deaf ears when he goes out and scores 2 goals, and like, let's be honest, he has been playing a matchup role for Washington this year, and that was the funny thing, was all the Washington fans tweeting at me saying, oh, you haven't watched any Pierre-Luc Dubois. Harm, you know, I've watched a lot of Capitals games this year, and I've talked about the Capitals a lot this season on this show. I've watched a lot of Capitals games, and I know Pierre-Luc Dubois is playing great. I know he's playing a matchup role. Hell, I might put him on my Selke ballot. Like, that's the thing. If I don't like a player like that, and it's, you know, I talk about it, I'm not going to let that influence my decision-making when it's time to vote on the NHL awards. If you know, when we do that, Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably on my Selke ballot if I submit today. Like, he has been having a great season. I can't deny it.
First of all, I'll just give you props for leaving the tweet up and just taking it the entire way through, not only after you scored the first goal, but the OT winner as well. A lot of people would have backed down and deleted the tweet. So I know you love to take your victory laps, but this time I'll give you credit for sticking in there and not hiding like a coward when one of your takes went sideways.
I have to say, like, if you're gonna have strong takes, which is what I do, like this, there's too many people, and I don't want to get into the whole business of it all and everything, but like, there's too many people that are like scared to have an opinion these days, and I am not one of those people. I will never be one of those people. Even if I'm wrong, and I'm not wrong about last night's take. Let's also say that. Let's just get that out of the way. It looks bad.
We'll see.
It looks bad right now, but I also replied to a lot of Caps fans and said, no, you're right. The history of this player is totally clean. He's changed. He's changed because now he's on your favorite team. Yep, you're right. I had some fun with some of the Caps fans that were in my mentions, but I will say, yeah, take it on the chin. I'm not gonna, again, I know that they're going to have their fun right now, but I'll tell you too, I bookmarked a lot of those replies, and when he leaves the team before the 26-27 season or whatever, whenever the next drama with him unfolds, I'll be replying to every single one of them. I'm just going to say that now, and I'm not announcing that to everybody, but I'll tell the listeners of this show that I've bookmarked all those tweets, and I'm going to be going back at them when things go south for PLD in Washington. I'll just say that. But I appreciate you giving me some props there. Because yeah, I could have turned off replies, I could have deleted it, but I wasn't going to do that. That's just that It's soft. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. You're the biggest PLD hater I've ever known. Like, even going back to last year, that's the other piece of context is this wasn't just
Last night.
spur of the moment. This was like years in the making. This moment was years in the making.
Yes, years in the making. Let's break down this game. Jeff's going to join us in about 10 minutes time, I think, maybe 10 minutes time. Let's break down this game.
He's in the waiting area, according to Jacob.
Jeff likes to watch the show, though. Jeff's okay in the waiting area. Like, Jeff's okay watching the show. We got to break this game down. And like I said, there's too much to talk about. Usually we bring in Jeff to help us break down the game. But, you know, like, he got to do that on Rinkwide last night. It's our turn, okay? And then we'll get to Jeff. We'll get to Jeff. Jeff, I promise we'll get to you. But let's break down this game a bit, Harm. Like I said, this one starts with the skirmish. The Canucks not really bringing it in the first period, just 3 shots in the first period. They get the 4-minute power play after the skirmish with Dubois and Hughes and Sherwood and that whole kerfuffle. But Hughes wasn't on the ice for any of it. In postgame, Hughes said, he's like, I don't know how I'm in the box longer than Dubois is after that, but he was. And basically that just made that 4-minute power play useless. Canucks get 1 shot on goal in the form of Jake DeBrusk chance. They were quiet in the first period. Dubois scores late in the first, and then the Canucks come alive in the second. Just your thoughts, I guess, on that whole sequence at the start of the game and the power play that really wasn't a power play because they didn't have access to Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, I think at some point they should have just iced the puck or intentionally gone offside or done something to cause a stoppage and get Hughes out of the box, because the entries were just miserable, completely out of sorts without Hughes engineering them. He's the one that, with his skating ability, whether it's him getting up the ice and then laying it back for a forward, or him just single-handedly stick handling his way through the neutral zone and getting the Canucks set up. He's their biggest asset for power play entries, for getting set up, and predictably getting set up was the biggest issue during that 4-minute power play. And I'll say this, overall, I was a fan of the Canucks performance against a really good Capitals team, especially in the second half onward. But this story of a lack of shots, a lack of offense, a slow start is becoming problematic. I mean, I was looking at their last number of games. Just look at their shot on goal totals through the first period. Just 3 against Washington, 4 against Montreal, 9 against Nashville, 6 against Seattle, 11 against Calgary, so pretty good there. But then 6 against each of Seattle, San Jose, and Ottawa as well. So they can't even consistently crack more than 6-7 shots in the first period, which is putting a team that already struggles to manufacture offense lately behind the 8 ball. It's a tough recipe for success. Again, I like the way that they responded from the second half onward, and overall it was a pretty good game for the Canucks, but their lackluster, sluggish starts are an issue for this team.
And they came alive in the second. Like, they did come alive in the second. They came alive in the third, seemingly rallying around what happened to their captain in the first period. Their captain, who everybody knows is playing injured. They rally. They pepper Logan Thompson with shots. As we told you on yesterday's show, though, Logan Thompson is a very good goalie, and he showed that last night. They eventually get through to him, and again, we're going to break down this goal later in the show and everything, but they score after some extended zone time, and I think the most promising thing from that game, Harm, if you take away anything, again, it's a 7th straight overtime loss. That's not great. But if you take away anything, it's that was the first time in recent memory that I think the Canucks have stacked shifts. And when we talk about the things that they've struggled to do and why they've struggled to protect leads and why they've struggled to sustain offensive pressure, that's why they've just been unable to stack those shifts. And they did that last night. They did that at the end of the second when they eventually scored the goal. They had all sorts of pressure on the Capitals, and they kept that up in the third. I think that's the most promising thing from my perspective, is it was a top team in Washington, who, by the way, Ovechkin's like their 8th best player last night. That Washington team is so good. They managed to stack those shifts, and I think that's the most promising thing. If you ask me, if you're looking at that game and you're looking for the silver lining, it's that they were the better team at 5-on-5, and that's not easy to do against this Capitals team.
Absolutely. They started winning puck battles. They were controlling play along the boards, which is really difficult to do against a Capitals team that has so much size, so much physicality and hardness on the wings. it was sort of reminiscent of last year's Canucks, where they played to that hardworking, battle-winning, always pressure, applying pressure identity. Their forecheck was effective. They weren't turning pucks over. They were connected. And like you said, they started building momentum. Now, a lot of that was Quinn Hughes' second game back. He was brilliant. It was another masterclass performance by him. But I also felt like the forwards were doing a lot to control play down low. And overall, in the second half of the game, it felt like, if you exclude overtime, where the Capitals had quite a few dangerous looks, second half of regulation time, the Capitals barely had any scoring chances, which is impressive considering the Caps are the highest scoring team in the NHL and have just been dummying and bullying teams offensively all year. So for the Canucks to sort of limit the damage in that way and start controlling play again, that is a really promising sign, especially because how many times have I come on the show lately and brought up their abysmal underlying numbers over the last 4 to 6 weeks? It's hopefully this is something that they can build on and continue, because they can sustain this gear. Yeah, the result last night isn't great, but the results will come if their process at even strength more consistently matches what we saw last night.
And Oliver Sholnick adding this in, Caps also have top PK and PP units, and the Canucks held them to nothing and scored one themselves. Yeah, that deserve a win to meter was definitely in the Canucks' favor last night. Like you said, you're hoping that this is a building block, and there's some post-game quotes that I want to get to, but I also want to bring Jeff in here, so we're going to do that. But you're hoping that this is a building block despite the result, that the team kind of rally around how they performed in that game and kind of believe in themselves, really believe in the system, believe in themselves, and say like, hey, if we play that kind of game against anyone, we're going to win more than we're going to lose. I know they didn't get the result last night, but you're hoping there's some internal belief being built there. Let's bring in Jeff Paterson, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver. Broke down this game last night. Jeff, sorry to keep you waiting. Your takes from last night's game.
Well, I have to say, first and foremost, I watched last night's game through this lens of a young Harm writing a letter to Alex Ovechkin, and it changed everything. I need to know the contents of that letter, but I also think now, Harm, that maybe you can give some advice to a young Quads to write an apology letter to Pierre-Luc Dubois, or maybe you deliver it in person, because they're here in 2 weeks' time. They've got an off day between games in Seattle and Vancouver, probably a practice day. You can go down there and talk to PLD yourself. So, yeah, I mean, I repeat a lot of what you guys just said. Canucks played well enough to win. I might quarrel with deserve to win, because ultimately you have to outscore your opponents. And they alternate now, sort of since Christmas, these games where they're poorest defensively and nights where they can't score. In Calgary, Brock Besser, a power play goal. That was it for the offense. Nashville, they get shut out. Last night, Connor Garland, a power play goal. 3 of the last 5 games, they haven't scored 5-on-5. You have to score 5-on-5. And look, they don't have last year's Austin Matthews. Nobody does. Even the Leafs don't have last year's Austin Matthews, where he's scoring every single night. Their top scorers are 30 to 40 goal guys, which means they're going to go some stretches without scoring. And Brock Besser a week ago was red hot. Now he's ice cold. And so the top of their lineup isn't all that productive, and there is nothing. There is zero supporting scoring right now. Like, it's a long list of guys that probably couldn't find the net if you pointed them in the right direction and gave them a push. And so I come back to this point of all these overtime games, and really you have to bake that into the Canucks schedule now, that it's not a 60-minute game anymore. Like, you have to be expecting that these games are going to go beyond regulation time, because more than half of them have over the last 20 games. They need, like, what would a goal from Niels Höglander or Pius Suter or Danton Heinen or Teddy Bluger or on it goes, somewhere in the run of play? What would one more goal from any of those guys mean that might put the Canucks in front and be the difference in a hockey game? Again, I'm not asking them to score every night, but their secondary scoring has completely evaporated, and particularly Pius Suter, who was red hot, scored 11 goals in 20 games at one stretch of this schedule. He's got 15 now without a goal. And in the absence of Elias Pettersson, that kind of stuff matters. And so, again, effort level, sure. Process was really good, but also to Harm's point, those 3 shots in the first period, only one at 5-on-5. It was Brock Besser. DeBrusk had the power play chance, and Noah Juleson chipped in with a 168-foot shorthanded clearance effort that went on goal and was registered as a shot. So one of the 3 shots on the night was from Noah Juleson from his own end One of the 3 shots in the first period was Juleson from his own end of the ice.
But Jeff, they also had 30+ shots. Finally, we should raise a banner for that. Haven't seen that in a while. But no, in all seriousness, when you look at this team's struggles in overtime, I've been looking at the 3-on-3 overtime stats without Quinn Hughes. They've been outscored 5-0. They've been outshot 16-4. High danger chances are 10-1. They've had one high danger chance all year at 3-on-3 OT without Quinn Hughes on the ice. Are the team's struggles as simple as they don't have another defenseman, especially with Filip Hronek out of the lineup, that can excel in this 3-on-3 overtime environment? Or do you think there are deeper issues with their overtime struggles?
I think it's a little deeper because Phil Hronek was in the opening net lineup and Connor Zary walked around him and parked the puck in the net. And he was there early in the season as well when Carolina beat them. So, I think it's a narrative that's picked up some steam because he's been out. And yes, it all falls on Quinn, who basically played most of overtime last night. I've been looking at it too today, Harm, just trying to find some sort of through line from all these games. And every overtime is different. You can't just throw a blanket over. If there was one issue, that would make it easy. They could address it and hopefully sort it out. But they've given up goals early in overtime. They've given up goals late in overtime. They've given up goals off the rush. They've given up goals off grade A chances. They've given up goals to defensemen. They've given up goals to the top players on the other team. So one of the common threads, I think, is puck watching. And that was the case last night. Like, how in the world can 3 National Hockey Leaguers go to the same guy? The math is pretty damn simple in overtime. There's 3 of you and 3 of them. If you each cover a guy, there probably isn't going to be a scoring chance. But the minute 3 guys go to the same player, well, it leaves 2 others wide open. And so, JT Miller, he loses his stick, but he's still in position to defend if either of Myers or DeBrusk takes one of the trailers. Tyler Myers twice since Christmas has turned pucks over in the offensive zone. So puck management's been a little bit of an issue here. I think foot speed just across the board. This isn't a particularly fast team. NHL Edge stats back that up. And in overtime, so much time and space out there to separate from guys and create some opportunities. And the Canucks don't have a ton of burners. This is all wild, though, to think that Quinn Hughes might be the prototype of the player that you would want on your team in 3-on-3 overtime. And even with him, they still can't find ways to win. Yeah, they generate a whole lot more with him on the ice than without him. But it's kind of crazy to me that just his superior skills haven't led to a few more victories. I know that he put the one on the doorstep for Connor Garland in Buffalo and made the drop pass to JT Miller in Florida. So he has contributed to wins. But Brock Besser, I'm starting to think overtime may not be for him. He's not a factor in overtime, certainly offensively. He hasn't scored an overtime goal this year, doesn't create the chances that you were just mentioning. And I think as a team, they just don't generate a ton of grade A's. Even the looks that they get in overtime, I wouldn't consider, absolute game breakers. And that seems to be the strategy. Possession, get the puck, hold on to it until you create that, even if it takes some regrouping, wear the other team down so that you create that one chance. And when you get it, you have to take advantage of it. And I wouldn't put a lot of the Canucks overtime chances in that grade A category. So I think there's lots of things to look at, and I hope that they are, because the one common thread is that they wind up losing way more often than they win when the game gets down to 3-on-3.
Once Elias Paterson comes back, first of all, the note on Quinn and being a little bit surprised that the Canucks haven't maybe been able to win games despite having one of the best defensemen in the league. First of all, the numbers with him on the ice at 3-on-3 OT are pretty good. But one thing that I sort of picked up on, and I think Pete Blackburn made the point too, was it almost seemed like once Washington got the puck, knew Quinn Hughes was on the ice, they were just sort of playing keep away and kind of burning time off the clock until they knew that he would get tired and eventually come off the ice. And then they started to kind of push. So I almost wonder if that's kind of part of the strategy. But a question or a potential idea I had for you: is it too much of a hot take to say that once Elias Pettersson comes back and you've got, more high-end forwards, would you experiment with, in your non-Quinn Hughes OT minutes, going with 3 forwards, at least for as long as Filip Hronek is out of the lineup?
I think yes. I mean, what they're doing isn't working for them. So to continue to trot out Tyler Myers or Carson Soucy or Vinny Desharnais, as was the case on the one shift in Seattle, if you had three forwards that you trusted in. But again, it gets the scoring power gets thin so quickly. If you have two forwards and Quinn, now you're looking at forwards 3, 4, and 5. Like, I don't even, who are your third, fourth, and fifth best forwards to throw out there in overtime that are going to generate scoring opportunities for the Vancouver Canucks? Because Pia Suter is probably one of them. Wouldn't take you that long, I don't think, to get to a guy like Niels Höglander. We know the struggles it's been for those players to generate and to score goals ultimately. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think some of it's roster construction and deployment in overtime. But sure, I'd be willing to look at three forwards. And again, when you consider, like, what do you have to lose? Another hockey game, but you're losing that with your best players and what you think is the right answer. I know somebody, and I'd seen in social, I don't know if you guys talked about it, but the idea of Rick Tocchet calling a timeout in overtime to rest Quinn Hughes. Like, again, Rick Tocchet generally doesn't use his timeouts, but that might be something to look at. It's something different. It's something they're not doing right now. It might lead to a little more energy for Quinn Hughes and maybe that one scoring chance that could win them a hockey game.
Hey, Jeff, I want to get your reaction to this clip from Rick Tocchet postgame. He's asked about their struggles in overtime, and I think IMAC asked the question and said, like, you know, given the amount of star power on the team, are you surprised that your team's losing in overtime? And I found Tocchet's quote really interesting, so I want to get your reaction to it as well. Let's pull up the clip here, Jacob.
Is it hard to believe with what you have on this team that you haven't won more games in overtime?
Well, we can't play Hughes the whole game. I mean, so I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. You know, we had some chances. Unfortunate what happened. So,
look, if that's not a shot, and I don't call it a shot, that sounds so dramatic, but if that's not him, really for one of the first times this season, saying the quiet part out loud that, yeah, the team I have isn't that great. The defense core that I've been given isn't very good. I don't know what is.
Yeah, except that he says I can't play him all overtime, and he played him for 3 minutes and 38 seconds, so 4 minutes and 19 seconds. So he came off the ice twice briefly, and sure enough, one of the times was when Dubois scored the winner. Yeah, I mean, I think it is sort of a cry for help, but I also think that the line of communication between Rick Tocchet and the front office is pretty solid, that he doesn't need to be messaging through the media, that the front office has to recognize that, yeah, I mean, the players that he's got to work with right now simply aren't good enough to get results. They were good enough to outplay the Washington Capitals for 60-plus minutes, but in the end, the guys that they got couldn't generate the offense that they needed. And so I understand where Tocchet's coming from. I thought he was rattled last night for one of the rare times. Didn't seem to fully grasp the initial question there from IMAC, and it had to be repeated. And then Thomas Drance asked him, what about getting a whistle on that early power play so that Quinn Hughes could have come out of the penalty box and run the second half of that power play? And again, he didn't fully seem to follow the logic there and talked about using his timeout, but it was a continuous flow. There were no whistles. There was no opportunity to use a timeout during the power play. And it just, that seemed like a real missed opportunity, whether it was the coaches or the players. They had to be smarter. Quinn was eligible to step out of the penalty box, just flip the puck on net, get a stoppage, go offside, whatever, and free your best player, and maybe you make something happen. Instead, 4 minutes of power play time, and they had the one shot, and that was Jake DeBrusk, and they weren't able to capitalize on it. So, yeah, I mean, I think the frustration is mounting, and I think that was sort of evident in a few of the answers from the head coach after the hockey game.
I'm just waiting for the Alvin interview where he says, the team hasn't practiced enough at 3-on-3. They got to work harder. It's not us.
I get lots of people that ask me if they do practice 3-on-3, and the answer is no. And it's such a dynamic game state that it's hard to try. I think you can do video work and work on some fundamental concepts, perhaps. I don't get why we haven't seen the play that they used to win in Florida, where Quinn Hughes carried the puck over on the left wing boards, obviously draws a crowd. Now, Florida had 3 forwards on the ice in that game, and maybe that was part of it, but I love the play. Quinn stops up, JT swoops back, builds up a head of steam, and then Quinn plays it to him and then casually steps back out of the zone so that he's onside as JT attacks and was able to get around his man and score there. It's not going to work every time, but I've watched all the overtimes. I don't think they've gone back to that play, and it looked like a set play, a design play. Why wouldn't you try that? I mean, you had success with it once. To me, it's worth going back to the drawing board a little bit and giving it a shot at the very least. So, little surprise, because obviously, if the team doesn't shade over to Quinn's side. Now all of a sudden he's got time and space in the zone to operate, and generally good things are going to happen there. So, just a sort of a note that I'm surprised we haven't seen them try sort of the back pass to JT with speed through the neutral zone.
I love seeing Kiefer Sherwood immediately jump in after that whole skirmish, whatever you want to call it, in the beginning where Dubois sort of went after Quinn. But given the extra shots that he took even after he was on his way to the penalty box, for example, do you think the Canucks sent enough of a message, made it hard enough on Dubois throughout the rest of the night? It's a fine line to balance, obviously, because Vinny Desharnais ended up taking a penalty, trying to get in Dubois' way. But it's a tough spot to be in, where the whole league knows that not only is Quinn playing hurt, but they know the exact injury. And Dubois must have known exactly what he was doing when he went after him early in the game.
Yeah, and to Dave's tweet, and I won't go too deep, but I think you made a good point in that the minute Dubois knew he was getting a hooking penalty, it was all bets were off. And he was basically saying to the refs, you're not going to be able to call everything that I'm going to do here in the next 30 seconds. So watch me. And I think there was a bit of a stick swing at Quinn's hand. I don't think it connected, but I think the intent was there to give him a wrap on the glove. And then, obviously, the check on the side boards, he wasn't just trying to go shoulder to shoulder. He's trying to pin Quinn's leg up against the boards there when everybody else had sort of let up, knowing that the play was coming to an end for the penalty. So, yeah, I mean, there were a few things that seemed a little shady just in terms of intent. I guess, Arm, I think, like, most of the size in this lineup is in the depth defense. And so instead of Vinny Desharnais taking a high sticking penalty as they go up ice, like, if you're going to make a statement, make a statement. And you got Forbert, you got Noah Juleson. If you want to build up sort of some equity in your account with the coaching staff and your teammates, it sort of felt like an opportunity there. And that would be a pretty solid trade-off. I think if you could get Pierre-Luc Dubois to drop the gloves, I'm not sure that he would have, but so message sending, I know people were a little upset that there wasn't more in the Montreal game when Goulet got Lekarmaki, but ultimately the rookie got his last laugh because he scored and had an assist, and that's sort of some payback there. They do play again on the 25th. I think Dubois is going to hear from him. The crowd at Rogers Arena, the big celly after the 1-0 goal there. I don't know if it'll reach Brad Marchand levels, but I think just the fact that they're playing 2 weeks on, there'll be enough. It'll still be raw enough. I think Dubois is going to hear from the fans, and we'll see if the Canucks, and I would imagine that they'll have a long enough memory, even though there's a bunch of games between now and then. So let's see what the second chapter of this Canucks Capitals matchup this season looks like on Saturday. It's a Saturday night, the 25th.
I think that's a Wyatt game, but if it wasn't, I'd be in the press box booing as loud as I can, Jeff. No, I kid, of course. But also, just on that whole line of thought, I guess, there was also the hit from Tom Wilson on Connor Garland at the end of the game that went uncalled. Tom Wilson stripping the Canucks bench. I know it's not a great contract in Boston, but man, this team misses Nikita Zadorov so badly, and they're going to miss him so much if they actually make the playoffs. They're going to miss him so much. I don't want to call the Canucks a soft team, but they are softer than they are with Nikita Zadorov on the ice. And don't tell me it doesn't matter and it's not a deterrent. Like, Tom Wilson chips the puck into the corner and no Canucks go near him because nobody wants to go up against Tom Wilson. We used to see that with Zadorov. Guys second guessing. You don't have time to second guess in the game of hockey if you're going to go into the corner hard or not. And guys are always second guessing when Zadorov's coming down on them. They miss Zadorov and they're going to miss him in the playoffs.
Well, and I just think if you look at their forward group, it's not a particularly big forward bunch. Kiefer Sherwood brings it every night. JT Miller, when he's on and motivated, he can bring some fire. They missed Dakota Joshua, just his size, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. It doesn't sound like too long, but I think he was starting. We saw that. He got in the fight in the Nashville game. He was a menace in Seattle, sort of mixing it up there. He was starting to find that edge to his game, which I think is really important. So, I would agree with you. And obviously on Zadorov, yes, they miss the swagger and just sort of that element. And we'll see if that's part of the wish list as this management group goes out shopping on the trade market, and we'll see what it looks like. And but in the here and now, this is who they are. The only reinforcements, it sounds like Thatcher Demko obviously is cleared now and will start one of these two games. And I'm really curious about Elias Paterson, guys. Practiced fully in Montreal on Sunday, was told game time decision, didn't play against the Habs, game time decision, didn't play against the Capitals. If he doesn't play Friday in Carolina, like, where is he? What's going on there? It was supposed to be a week, and it's turned into 2.5 weeks now. Quinn's back well before him, and we know that Quinn is playing through something with the apparatus on his hand. So, I don't know, a little murky right now around Elias Paterson. I hope that he's ready to go on Friday. And I just want to mention quickly, Canucks catch a bit of a break here, that Carolina is at home to Toronto tonight. So they're getting the Canes on the back end of back-to-backs. Probably going to see Dustin Tokarski in goal. All 4 games this year, a 35-year-old sort of journeyman. So they're not going to see Kochetkov. I assume he's going to face the Leafs tonight. But also, it's back-to-back in 3 and 4 for a Carolina team that got off to this incredible start. They were 14-4 to start the season. They're under 500 in their last 22 games. So we talk about this daunting road trip. The Leafs are on a roll right now. They're playing well. Winnipeg, that's going to be a beast at the end of the trip. I do think there's an opportunity for the Canucks here against a tired Carolina team that isn't at the top of its game. And if the Canucks play like they did in the second period and even into the third period, if they can bring that from Washington to Carolina, I think they stand a chance here to get a result. But one thing to say it, ultimately, they're the ones that are going to have to get out there on the ice and make it happen. If it doesn't happen for them, then it gets really difficult the rest of the way to salvage this road trip.
Jeff, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it as always, and we will chat with you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
There he is, Jeff Paterson, the host of Rinkwide Vancouver. One of the hosts of Rinkwide Vancouver obviously does that show with Irfan Gafar and a rotating guest host sometimes. So,
Good pull, by the way, on the Wilson hit. If Höglander, if his shove on Anderson warranted an interference penalty in the last minute of that game against the Habs, then absolutely that Wilson hit on Garland should have been an interference call with the Canucks going to the power play in overtime.
Yeah, and honestly, like, there's people in the chat right now saying, well, Zadorov, like, yeah, I hate that contract in Boston. Go check it out on Canucks Army. Zadorov, there's been reports. Zadorov even came out and said it as well about the negotiations with the Canucks. Canucks had a chance to sign him for less than what Boston ultimately signed him for. I still think what he was going to sign for was probably too expensive. But if you say, no, that's too expensive, and then use that same amount of cap space on Vinny Desharnais and Tyler Myers, we're going to have issues, and we have issues now. This team has issues right now. This is why I'm so passionate about Nikita Zadorov after a game like last night where Tom Wilson's flexing in the penalty box. Did you see him showing his hands to Quinn Hughes? Did you notice that? I think it was only on the Washington. Only on the Washington broadcast. Someone tweeted it out, but he was in the box and he's showing off his hands as if to brag that he has 2 working hands. You think that's happening with Nikita Zadorov in the lineup? No, it is not, and this Canucks team's soft.
Come on. You cannot let's not revisit the whole Zadorov thing.
Okay, we don't have to, but they're missing him, and they're going to miss him in the playoffs.
Sure, I agree. He is a master at the game within the game. But that contract is going to age really poorly in Boston. He hasn't been worth the deal.
Yeah, no,
just straight up.
Absolutely. But with what cap space the Canucks used, right, for 2 third-pairing guys, I would have been fine spending $5 million on Nikita Zadorov.
Like, the one thing I will say is they paid. I would have liked to see on Myers' extension a 2 somewhere, right? Either the cap it's starting with a 2 and it being like 2.5 times 3, or it being a 3 million times 2 contract. But ultimately, the more that I've thought about it, 3 million for Tyler Myers isn't really that egregious. It's the Desharnais part that I think stings most, because I mean, guys like Ilya Lyubushkin got 3.25 million in free agency. Matt Dumba got $3.75 million in free agency, and especially Myers is a right shot defenseman. So okay, you're gonna pay that money to Zadorov. What are you icing on the right side of the blue line? Is Noah Juleson playing top pair minutes now with Filip Hronek out of the lineup? So I don't want to play revisionist history with Zadorov. They made the right decision to move on. Let's not revisit it.
Fair enough. I'm just saying, I don't think people are talking about this much because we're still in the regular season. I think I know we're going to talk about it on this show. I probably will. When this gets exposed in the playoffs. They didn't have anybody to contend with what the Capitals were doing last night. The Capitals approached that game like a playoff game. Montreal did the same thing in a different way. But the Capitals approached that game like a playoff game with the way they were playing, their intensity. And the Canucks just can't really match it. They just can't. They have Kiefer Sherwood and not much else. So, anyways, you're right. We don't need to We don't need to revisit the Zadorov stuff, but I did think about him last night and think to myself, they're missing him in a game like this, and games like this are what you get in the playoffs. So we'll wait and see. On a positive note, though, before we get to Family Feud and before we get to anyone else, on a positive note, Harm, we talked about how you hope this is a building block for this team and how great Quinn Hughes was. We've talked about that already. I wanted to get to this post-game quote from Quinn Hughes, and I'm not sure if you heard it, but we've been giving the captain a lot of praise for the things he's saying in the media. The things he's doing on the ice, everybody can see those, but the things that he's saying and the way that he's leading this team, this stands out to me. Let's listen to this clip. Pull it up, Jacob. This was post-game Quinn Hughes in Washington.
In terms of that investment, just I know it's been a bit of a skid results-wise, but given the intensity of the game tonight, you're able to grind out a result against Vancouver. Is there something you take from the way your group competed?
Yeah, well, I think we're a good team. So they're a good team, but we're a good team too. And we've battled through a lot of adversity this year. I don't think we've had our full lineup, yet this year. But guys are playing really hard right now, and we're a good team too. So we expect to get 2 points against a team, any team.
From your perspective, well, midway through the second period,
in the sense of
you guys competing in take it to them, carry play.
I mean, games are gonna have ebbs and flows. Like you said, they're good teams. So they're gonna have pushes, and we got to come back with a push of our own.
I like that. The swagger. We talk about swagger when we talk about Nikita Zadorov. There's swagger there from the Canucks captain. Really like that message from him post-game.
Yeah, I mean, especially given the bar that they set last year, we can acknowledge, process-wise, they played well, hard-fought, OT loss, at least they picked up a point. But given where they are in the playoff race and needing to pick up as many points as possible, the players should feel on any given night when they're that close that they should be disappointed when they sort of lose an OT and don't get the full 2 points. There should be that expectation, at least from the group internally, that every time you're out there, you want to take advantage and beat any team. And you can appreciate the things you did well, but it can't always be about the moral victories. As far as it shows you that the bar is still really high in the mind of Quinn and the leadership core as far as what they feel they need to play to, because let's remember the expectations heading into this season were that they were hopefully going to be Stanley Cup contenders, and obviously they aren't at that level now, in large part because they've been hammered by injuries all season.
Another thing Quinn brought up was we haven't had our full lineup just yet, and there's that belief from the captain. There's, it's choppy waters for the Canucks right now, but you want Quinn leading this team and being this team's captain. Can't say enough good things about Quinn Hughes. Really liked what he had to say post-game. All right, Harm, anything else on this game? We talked about it for a while. Do you want to get to Family Feud now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to go first. So, Harm, turn off your whatever you got to do, mute your mic, take out your headphones, and take it away, technical producer Jacob Lazar.
Oh, it was great to hear the music again. I'm your man, Jacob Lazar, and we're back for our first Canucks Conversation Family Feud of 2025. Quads, how do you feel? A little bit of time off. Was it good? Are you guys ready to get back in the win column?
I think I don't want the rest to turn into rust, and that's what I'm worried about. I'm also fighting with someone in the comments right now, but I gotta save it for
that. You're
else.
A little distracted.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to this quickly then so you can get back to your discussions.
That's right. Thank you.
Quick reminder of the rules. You'll have 25 seconds on the clock. Your time will begin when I finish reading the first question. If you can't think of an answer, say pass. We'll come back to it at the end if we have time. David Quadrelli, are you ready to go?
I am.
Name a Canucks captain whose jersey has not yet been retired.
Bo Horvat.
Name a current or former Canuck whose last name starts with the letter B.
Burrows.
Name a current or former Canuck known for his penalty-killing prowess.
Ryan Johnson.
Name an NHL mascot other than Finn.
Bowie.
Name a former Canucks minor league affiliate team.
Manitoba Moose.
Good work. All right.
That it?
Yep, you're done. Get Harmon's attention.
Harmon's
I'll tally up your score.
That's 200 points, so you're good. Harm, I know you can't hear me just yet. You will hear me in a second, and when you do, you'll be pleased to know that I just got like 190 points. I crushed that. Like, rest you to rest my ass. No chance. I think I just crushed it.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah? Okay, tell me what I missed.
No, okay, no, you did fine. You got 102 points, so you got over half.
Boom,
you got over
done.
halfway there.
All right, I'm out.
All right,
wait,
Harmon.
I don't need to mute. Okay,
no,
go ahead,
you don't.
Harm.
You're good. All right, Harm. I'll remind you again of your rules. You'll have 30 seconds on the clock. Your time will begin when I finish reading the first question. If you give one of Quad's responses, you'll hear the buzzer, and I'll ask you to try again. If you can't think of a response, say pass. We'll come back to it at the end. Are you ready, Harm?
Yeah.
Name a Canuck captain whose jersey has not been retired.
Quinn Hughes.
Name a current or former Canuck whose last name starts with the letter B.
Bure.
Name a current or former Canuck who was known for his penalty-killing prowess.
Manny Malhotra.
Name an NHL mascot other than Finn.
Gritty.
Name a former Canucks minor league affiliate team.
Manitoba Moose.
Try again.
Utica Comets.
Good work.
Oh, we just won. 300 points.
Let's go.
Attaboy, Harv. You crushed
So
it, dude.
I'm going to do this a little differently now. We're into a new year. I'm going to tally up the score. I'm going to know if you guys have won or lost. We're going to go through all the answers, and then I'll tell you how many points, kind of one by one, like they actually do on the show.
Okay,
all right.
let's do it.
So, Quads, obviously you got to 102 points. Harm, for name a Canucks captain whose jersey has not yet been retired, you said, sorry, who'd you say on that one?
Quinn Hughes, and I
Hughes,
said
right.
Bo Horvat.
So, Horvat was the number 2 answer with 29 points. Hughes was the number 4 answer with 13. Roberto Luongo was the number 1 answer. And I think a lot of people thought the same way on that. He was in the Ring of Honor, but not his number retired. Current or former Canuck whose last name starts with the letter B. This was an interesting one because there's obviously a few current guys. Besser, Brandstrom, Bluger, and some team legends with guys like Bure, Bertuzzi, Dave Babich. Quads, you gave Alex Burrows, got you 10 points. Pavel Bure, Harm, got you 14 points. The number 1 answer was Brock Besser. The number 2 answer, again, was Bure.
Damn, I thought that would have gotten more than 14.
It's just a big spread. It's just
a big spread.
Yeah. Number 2 answer for 14 is fine.
Name a current or former Canuck known for his penalty-killing prowess. Quads, Ryan Johnson, no points.
Wow, I thought higher of Canucks Convo listeners. He was
But Manny
Manny
Malhotra, who again also is a guy within the organization, he was the number 1 answer with 20 points. Another widespread here. We got some Ryan Kessler, some Yannick Hansen, Chris Tanev, Teddy Bluger. Surprisingly, not very much Trevor Linden, who, from what I've seen back in the day, was an absolutely elite penalty killer.
Did Jay Beagle get votes?
I can check. I don't think I saw Jay Beagle.
I
know what? There might have been one Jay Beagle in there.
As soon as I said Ryan Johnson,
there was one Jay
if
Beagle.
If it's not Ryan Johnson, it's got to be Jay Beagle.
There was 1 point for Jay Beagle. So you guys are now up to 149 points with 2 questions to go here. Name an NHL mascot other than Finn. Quads, you said Bowie, who was the number 2 answer. Harm, you said Gritty, did you not?
Yeah.
Gritty was the number 1 answer, 40 points. That brings you up to 189. So it's going to be close. Some other mascots that got significant votes: Harvey the Hound, S.J. Sharkey, Youppi. There was also just a couple random ones, Bailey from the LA Kings, and then a few people who clearly don't know some mascots and just put something random. Anyways, the last question. You need 11 points. Quads, for the former minor league affiliate, you said the Manitoba Moose. That was the number 1 answer. Harmon, you said the Utica Comets. That was the number 2 answer.
Let's
for
go.
23 points. You guys are back in the win column.
Let's go.
Much needed.
Yeah, that was a good bounce back, kick off the new year, right? That record should be reset at 0. But anyways, that's okay. No problem. 7-8 on the year, on the season. We'll take it. We crushed it. You did great, Harm. You know what? Going second is not easy, and you had the better answers overall, I think.
I'm hit or miss. Like the last couple going second, I was really rough. I needed to bounce back.
You crushed it this week. We got it done. We got the job done. Let's do it next week. New survey out yet, Jacob?
Not yet. I didn't have time to do it before today's show, but it will be in the description for tomorrow's show. We'll remind you guys then to go and leave your responses.
Beauty. And with that, let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by Greta. Come down to Greta Bar YVR for a thrilling evening presented by Fountain Tire as we watch Vancouver take on Edmonton. There's going to be exciting giveaways, including hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, and jerseys to be won. Doors open at 5 p.m. and puck drop is at 6 p.m. Each ticket grants you access to all the action, and it's all in support of one broken biker. Our VIP 4-person reservation includes entry into the event, Greta Burger and beverage, plus a game card. Don't miss out. Secure your spot now at nationgear.ca for an action-packed night with your Canucks Army crew. Folks, if you haven't bought your ticket yet, go ahead and do that. nationgear.ca events tab, you'll find it. Canucks Army, Greta Bar. We had such a good time, and I have to say, the amount of people that we get that come out and we meet them, and when you meet someone, you're just like, hey, like, how's it going? And they're like, oh, I'm this person from the chat, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I talk to you every day online, and now I get to meet you face to face. That's the best. That's the absolute best. Travis Wall, Jeremy Lee, we've met all those guys, and so many more. Folks, if you're watching on podcast, we love to hear from you as well. If you're on YouTube, come tell us your screen name. We love chatting with you. It's going to be a good time. It's just good times, good vibes. You meet some people, you bring your friends. It's so much fun. You got the arcade games, and we have a separate part of the bar kind of roped off, VIP access, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to come watch the game with us, so I hope everybody listening to this buys their ticket and comes on out. Okay, Harm, did you have anything in your notes for anyone else that you wanted to get to? I really wanted to talk about just league-wide, just kind of the outlook on a few different things, but that's it from me. I don't have much.
Sure, let's talk about the topics you got in mind.
Okay, so right now, and I know people want us to talk about this report about the Bruins and Paterson. We'll talk about that in a second. I want to get to that. I have some things to say about it. But right now, the Eastern Conference wildcard race, and we can call it a race, even if it's a little slow and a little different than we would have thought, that is starting to look very interesting because you have teams that are just like painfully mediocre, but one of them's going to make the playoffs. Like, one of them is going to make the playoffs. We asked the question the other day of, like, what are the Tampa Bay Lightning? I'm going to answer that now. January 9th, write it down. The Tampa Bay Lightning are the first wildcard team. Okay? That's my answer to that question. They're going to get that first wildcard spot. But the second wildcard spot,
they're going to finish top 3 in the Atlantic, in my opinion.
Oh, okay, sure.
I think they're going to overtake Boston.
Sure. So, are you saying that Boston is going to finish as Tampa has a higher points percentage, points percentage right now, so that's a fine take. Are you saying Boston's going to be wildcard 1 then, or are you saying that this is totally up for grab both spots?
Boston's likely wildcard 1, but I just Tampa, to me, I already sort of view them as a playoff lock.
Okay, fair enough.
Plus 33 goal differential.
The interesting thing when you dive into this is that the Ottawa Senators have a better points percentage than the Boston Bruins do. So, I'm not saying that Ottawa's going to make the dance. I'm saying that right now, Ottawa's 2 spots out of the second wildcard spot, and this is going to be a very close one. This is something I'm definitely watching as we go down the final stretch of the season. The teams that are like in it in terms of their record and everything, the teams that are in it, other than Tampa, Boston, who we've already mentioned, you've got Columbus, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Montreal, even Detroit's in there. So like I said, a lot of painfully mid teams, not to mention that Philadelphia and New York are both New York teams are like right behind them. You've got this, again, race is pretty generous, but you've got a very, very close Eastern Conference standings, and it's just a lot of fun to watch right now. The last thing I wanted to say, actually, do you have like a pick of who you think's going to come out of there?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Because I'm not really a fan of any of these teams in particular. I would lean towards Ottawa if it wasn't for Ottawa. Do we know how soon Allmark's going to come back? Because they need above average goaltending, and it's not just Allmark. They've been missing their number 2 goaltender for a while too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is Allmark it's still like week to week. I think. I don't think they've said anything else, so that's obviously a concern. But they haven't said like, oh, it's going to be 2 to 3 months or anything like that. So I think that's the reason that you're maybe worried about Ottawa. I think that's very fair.
Columbus could be in a bit of trouble because Sean Monahan just went down with injury. Monahan was playing at a point per game, and he was like top 5 among all NHL players in 5-on-5 points. Their number 1 center, him and Marchenko together, they'd outscored teams like 34-12 at 5-on-5. So Monahan going down is a big blow for the Blue Jackets, who are currently holding down that second wildcard spot.
Okay, last thing I want to say about the Eastern Conference. You think things are bad in Vancouver? 7th straight overtime loss. Pittsburgh has 3 extra time losses, 2 shootout, 1 overtime. Pittsburgh has 3 straight. Their last 3 games, they have lost in extra time. That's a whole new different kind of pain, I think, to have it in multiple games like that, back to back to back. That's I'm curious how long that's going to go. They play Edmonton on Thursday, today. So we'll see if that streak snaps tonight, but it's definitely something I'm watching for. Do we see anything there? Canucks are obviously 2/3 of the way there right now, but I wanted to get that in there. Okay, this one out of Boston. It was, I can't remember. It was like a legitimate reporter. It's not just media, or excuse me, it's not just like social media people tweeting about it or whatever, but the Paterson Miller stuff in terms of Boston. And the writer goes on to, give like kind of his best guess at what a package could look like, which is what a lot of these things are going to come down to. Is it's like, you're going to hear when every team is calling about 2 players, you're going to get various reports, you're going to get various leaks that this team is interested in one of these players, which I think is what we've gotten here. And people are immediately looking at it saying, well, Boston would want a young center, so let's try to put together a package for Elias Pettersson. You've been listening to this show long enough, folks, to know that we're not diving into the Paterson Miller stuff more than we absolutely have to. I'm not going to sit here and create any sort of trade proposal. I just wanted to mention it because I'm in the camp of bring back Big Z, no matter what.
Bad take.
Not a bad take.
Awful
Not
take.
a bad
There's
take.
no,
Not
honestly, especially with Paterson, there was no package that the Bruins could realistically put together that would entice me if I'm the Canucks.
That's
none,
fine.
right? They're not including a Charlie McAvoy or David Pastrnak in a deal, obviously.
They are in the deals that I'm cooking up in my head.
Yeah, again, maybe if you want to throw on NHL 25,
Oh,
but
no,
if
don't
you
Get on it,
live-
Jacob.
No. I didn't mean for us to actually try that. But no, in real life, there's no way the Bruins are going to are like, what pieces would interest you off their roster?
Well, you named 2 of them in the sense of they're never going to get them.
Yeah, you're never going to get them. And outside of that, you've just got the older core pieces, like Marchand, who they're not going to move either, and not that the Canucks would want anyway.
I don't think so. No.
Brandon Carlo isn't good enough, even though he's a top 4 right-handed defenseman.
So what if it's not Pettersson?
I mean,
entertain me, Harmon.
Looking up and down, I would. I don't know. Even then, there isn't a lot. Like, okay, if that's the case, I see. Here's the thing: I don't think Brandon Carlo is a high-end enough top 4 right-handed defenseman for him to be like, oh, I want that guy. Because think about it: you deal Miller, immediately you've got a massive top 6 center issue. The only piece that you could maybe think about, and it's kind of redundant because I think he's banged up right now anyway, is Hampus Lindholm, because when Hampus Lindholm, like, keep in mind, like, he's having a really good year, but he's also got a ceiling to where it wasn't too long ago that he was getting Norris votes.
Yep. And
if you're talking about completely fixing your second pair and a guy who could absolutely be a really, really high end top pair caliber defenseman who slots in on your second pair, sure, but then it's, again, you're creating a massive hole up the middle to fill a need on the back end. How much have you actually improved as a team, right?
That's fair. That's fair. Do you want to hear my trade package? It involves some 2052 first round picks, just like Oliver.
Really.
Oliver Sholnick suggested that in the chat. I'm just joking. I don't have an actual trade package. Harm, let me dream though. Like, let me say I want Big Z back. Maybe not on that contract. Maybe not on that contract.
Yuck, man.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is if the Canucks were able to sign him in the offseason when he was willing to sign for less, I'm less upset about that cap hit. But now, like, you can't trade for that cap hit.
Realistically, also, would you be surprised if this call is similar to New York one, the reported, Bruins interest is similar to the New York one, where it's like,
Oh, absolutely.
okay, we're interested in JT Miller. How would you like our washed up Elias Lindholm, because you liked him last year and almost signed him to an extension? Is like with Lindholm essentially being the Zibanejad portion, and we'll toss in a little extra. Like, the point being, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just teams kicking tires and lowballing, just like the types of packages that you immediately hang up on.
Absolutely, and then it gets out there. That's what I was trying to say at the start. Is the reason we're not going to dive into all of these. People were clamoring for it in the chat. This is basically me doing a PSA of like, tomorrow when we hear about Carolina or whatever, or we hear about the Islanders down the road or whatever, we're not going to talk about each one. Is basically what I was trying to say before I started really talking about the Boston one and diving down the road of this is what it would take to get this player. That was what I was trying to get at. Is like, when you know that every team is calling the Canucks about these players, you're going to inevitably hear about teams calling. Like, that's going to happen, and we don't need to dive into each one. We're not going to dive in to each one. This one from Brimfy Schwingle in the chat. Sorry. Imagine being a GM in 21-25 and you realize you don't have a first round pick because Quads traded it away a century ago. That is so good. That is so good. That is
First
so
round
funny.
pick would be a number 1 overall pick too, guaranteed.
Yeah, I didn't lottery protected. Who cares? Screw
Exactly.
that. That's a really, really good comment. I love that. That's so funny. Okay. Okay. Kempner Nux in the chat said, I want to hear Dave's target package. I don't actually have one, because at the end of the day, like, you don't actually want Nikita Zadorov in a trade, because Nikita Zadorov at that contract is different at the one that the Canucks maybe could have signed him at, right? Like, that's where the hang up really comes. You miss Nikita Zadorov, you don't go out and trade for him to make things better. You don't. It's just, not going to happen. Can you trade buyout money? I don't think you can, right?
No, you can't trade buyout money.
All right.
What kind of order clause is just workshopping?
I just got an idea.
How to circumvent the cap. But no, it is funny. Like, all these reports, like, I'll be honest, when I hear like the Bruins are inquiring or interested, or the Islanders are inquiring and interested in Paterson or whatever it is, it's like, of course they are. Like, of course, every team is probably calling the Canucks to figure out what's going on, to see if they can make a favorable type of deal work. And then all of a sudden it comes out, oh, this team is inquiring. It doesn't mean the Canucks are taking it seriously. It's like if GM Quads, owner Quads, called up Kyle Davidson and was like, hey, that Connor Bedard kid, Jeremy Roenick doesn't seem to like him. There you go. And then it comes out, owner Quads has been inquiring about Connor Bedard. Doesn't mean the Blackhawks are going to entertain or going to seriously entertain the idea of moving Connor Bedard.
If I ever became a GM, people will know, because I'd only leak my info to you. It would just be you and Canucks Army that gets all the scoops, and it'd be like, oh, hearing this team is calling this team about this. And then the other team would get upset about all the leaks, and I'd be like, I don't care. I don't mind. Brad is speaking my language in the chat, because he has an answer to my problem with Zadorov's contract. So, Quads, if you trade for Zadorov, you can get Boston to retain now that they realize what a mistake they made. Boom, everything's back on the table. I'm going to spend the next 24 hours cooking up trade proposals. I'll be back with 7 Nikita Zadorov trade proposals for tomorrow.
I might be sick tomorrow. Just throwing it out there.
I thought tomorrow was a solo show. It's just me rattling off Zadorov trade proposals with nobody to tell me they're a bad idea. It's just me and a mic. Okay.
I'm gonna undisclosed ailment. I'm gonna be day to day out tomorrow.
Oh man. Okay, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day. Harm, I was trying to guess the vibes for this game. 3 straight overtime losses. The Penguins are heavy underdogs against the Oilers, but let's be honest, the Oilers are rolling. The Oilers have found their fastball, just like they did last year around this time. The Oilers are humming along. I don't love the Penguins' chances as heavy underdogs, so I think we're actually going to steer clear of that game. One game we're going to look at, though, and one I think ultimately we're going to take, is the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight are taking on the Carolina Hurricanes on the road. I don't ever bet on the Leafs, but they are plus 150 underdogs on this game. And of course, you also have to remember, I don't look at lineup info. I don't know why the odds are that way, but it looks enticing. So I'm going to take it. Plus 150, money line, Leafs to beat the Hurricanes tonight. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly.
Can we actually start tracking your wins and losses?
Yes, we absolutely can. People in the chat were supposed to, like, they were supposed to kind of keep a tally going. I think I've been off. Like, I think, like, I kind of keep track in my head. I think I'm like 3-5 or 3-6 on the year.
But also, a simple win-loss record might be the simplest way to track it, but it wouldn't be the most accurate way, because more often than not, like, you're always usually taking underdogs.
I believe in the underdogs. Yeah.
So you should theoretically be losing a little bit more often than you are winning. But I'd be curious to track your results over time.
Paul Papadoulis in the chat. Hearing Vancouver has called Calgary for Rasmus Anderson numerous times. Me leaving voicemails to Craig Conroy. Just please.
No, the Flames shut it down. No, it's just this quadrelli thing that I see on the caller ID that just every day, Monday to Friday, leaves voicemails, 5 voicemails a day.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's me expressing interest, is calling and leaving voicemails. I'm just like, I'd give you this guy, I'd give you that guy, but not that guy. Just conversations with myself. Conversations with myself. Self.
Dear Craig, it's been 24 hours since you last heard from me. I hope you'll call me back one day.
If you're receiving this message, it's because I'm still interested in Rasmus Anderson. Okay.
If you haven't blocked me by now.
I don't know why it's going to voicemail right away. Okay. All right. Fun show today. We'll be back tomorrow to preview tomorrow's game. Actually, Harm, one last thing. This was thrown around, and we'll know the answer tomorrow, so that's why I want to answer it right now. Who starts tomorrow? Thatcher Demko backed up last night. He's good to go. Tocchet even said as much post-game that Demko's going to be good to go to start. Like, he was good enough to back up, so that meant he was good enough to play after the back spasms. This was from Frank Ricciuti in the chat here. That's a name you can trust. He said, if Demko is good to go, do you play him versus the Canes or the Leafs? I'm saying Canes. Kevin Lankinen probably needs a break, in my mind, and then you put Lankinen in for the Leafs.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. You agree with me. I just want to hear you say you liked one of my ideas, so I brought it up. All right, we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harmon Dowell, our technical producer Jacob Lazar, and our intern Nick, my name is Dave Jelly. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.